You're listening to Grown and Growing with Sonia Hamlin. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Grown and Growing podcast. I am very excited for you guys to hear the conversation today, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention being really down about the Supreme Court decisions that were passed last week. I'm specifically talking about the overturning of Roe versus Wade. And, I was really upset about that. And even though I knew it was coming, when I got the notification at work, I was just shocked, like, wow, they actually did it. And again, you knew it was coming, but to see that is crazy. And, I just started to think about the rights that, not that I would have, because I'm 44. I have 2 children. I am not having any more. So this doesn't affect me personally, but it does affect my daughter. It does affect my nieces and so many other things about their lives, and how they're growing up, how, how we teach them to care for their bodies, how we prepare them to go out in a world that is hostile in a lot of ways to women. And so how do you prepare for that? How do I prepare to send, my daughter off to college in the South or the Midwest or wherever it is she wants to go, where her rights are particularly restricted? So it's interesting. But it made a couple of things very clear to me. One, that we have to do something to fight back. I have to do more. I'm challenging myself to do more. I know that history has shown that Black women show up at the polls, and we typically find ourselves on the right side of history, and in a lot of ways warning what is coming down the road. But I'm also challenging myself personally to do more in this fight, donate, write letters, which I've never done before, call my congressman, which I've never done before, and just do a little bit more so that I can make sure I am adding to the sea of voices who oppose this ruling. And then the second thing is it reinforces the notion that we have to prioritize joy, seek ease, and pursue financial independence. I feel like those things are so key. The first two, because the world is hard. The world is hard enough already, and I'm not trying to make it harder for myself. To bring more joy into my life is an act of resistance in my book, because there's so much to be upset about. So how can we actively bring more joy? And the last one is financial independence. The fact of the matter is, we know that this ruling will affect Black and brown women the most. And the way that we can take care of ourselves until we're able to overturn this rulings, we don't know how long it's going to take, but it's going to take a while. And in order to take care of ourselves, it's so important that we have the financial resources needed to be able to fully take care of ourselves, to give ourselves more choices that circumvent this ruling, like being able to travel to a state that provides the care that you need, or choosing to live in a state that's not hostile to women, to be able to live the life that you want. This episode is kind of timely because my guest today talks about pursuing a dream that she has deferred for over 20 years. One of the things that I like to hit on with this podcast is not waiting any longer to pursue the things that are going to make us happy. And that is exactly what my next guest has done. Her name is Evelyn Logan. And in full transparency, I met Evelyn because she was an executive at my work. But she left her job after a year and after a long career working in healthcare administration to become a writer. So Evelyn is Nigerian American. She's a storyteller and author of the new book, On the Streets of Ondo. So of course, we talk about the book, but we also talk about her journey to becoming an author and why she decided to do it when she did. So take a listen as Evelyn walks us through her journey of why she decided to give up her career as a high-ranking healthcare executive in order to pursue what gave her a lot of joy and fulfillment. Welcome, Evelyn, to the podcast. I'm so excited to have you here today. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me today, Sonia. I'm really excited. This is going to be fun.
Yeah, this is going to be fun because you have just launched a new children's book called On the Streets of Ondo, which we will get to in a moment. But I wanted to have you on the podcast when I realized you were releasing a book, and I was like, oh, she definitely has to come on, mostly because of how we met. And, we've known each other for a few years now, and we met at work. You were a VP, came in as a VP, and I was director of marketing. You were VP. And, when you started, I was so excited because, at the time, our executive team lacked diversity, right? It was diverse in the sense that there were a lot of women on the team, but there weren't a ton of people of color on the team. So I was excited to see you walk through the door. I was like, ooh, send me, who is this new VP? Send me her picture so we can, do the usuals. And when they sent it, I was like, what? No, no. So I was excited to have you join our organization. And so you were with the organization for how long? Like 2 years or?
No, actually, I was with the organization for a little over a year.
Okay. A little over a year.
Yeah. It was a short period. And I had a lot going on at the time. I had 3 young children, as you know. And then I was getting my PhD.
Right.
In public health services. And so that was a beast, a lot of work at the time because I was already in the dissertation phase. And
right.
So the work load, which at the executive level in a hospital setting is
oh my God.
lot. It's a lot to ask. And so I had to make a decision there of what I wanted to do. And so it was almost like you could call it burnout.
Right.
We say that for the physicians and the nurses a lot, but I think anyone who works in healthcare for the period that both of us actually has worked in healthcare,
right.
At that point, there's a possibility of burnout. So
not a possibility, especially over the last 2 years. And I can honestly say over the last 2 years was probably the most stressful time. I've been in healthcare for 13 years. And these last 2 years have been the most stressful time. And so I definitely get that. And then you were coming into to me, what is a very difficult role. There are many difficult roles in healthcare, but the one that you were coming into was particularly a hard nut to crack. And so I was like, having that on top of being, getting your PhD on top of having a family, it's a lot. It's a lot.
No, absolutely. And every experience is always a learning experience for me. So I really enjoyed my time there. I felt like I took away a lot from the time that I spent there. I know it was short, it being a little bit over 12 months, 13 months to be exact, but it was one of those experiences where I understood the assignment, so to speak.
Right.
And it wasn't just about me as, someone of color coming into that role, especially understanding, because there's a physical and a mental aspect to it, right? And so coming into the role, understanding that was a role that I was playing because there were no African American. There was one person of color, but outside of that was it. And so coming into that role, you're shaping a lot. My first few weeks there, I had many people approach me and said, I'm so happy to see you in this role. We don't have anybody here, so I definitely understood what you meant when you said that at the beginning, and to me, it meant a lot. But at the same time, the challenge and the task was huge because what you had was a growing organization trying to create a one look with multiple hospitals.
Yeah.
And when you're going through transition like that, it's difficult, not just for the people who are executing, but
Right.
everyday staff who's going to impact at some point.
Right.
And so, coming into that role, I oversaw a lot of some of the operational areas, support services, like nutritional services. That was, really a challenge at that location. And, so there was a lot of work, but outside of that, the regulation around patient experience is huge.
Yeah.
If anybody, is in a hospital setting, you understand the regulations around patient experience and quality measures and the safety of care in the hospital. And so also having that umbrella,
Yeah.
coming in with both of those umbrellas did make it challenging, but it's definitely an experience I learned from. And I would say some of it, you see it in being a business owner, an entrepreneurial. For my role as an author and a CEO, because I'm running a business and I wrote the book.
Yeah. And I definitely get that. And, when you having to, come into an organization, you're the only Black person on the executive team. And honestly, there aren't a lot of Black leaders in the hospital. I'm one. I could think of one other. And I'm having a hard time finding another one. And then you add on the regulatory aspect of it. And that's one of the reasons I'm happy that I'm switching jobs, because working in a hospital is a different kind of stress. Like, it's not only the regulatory, it's not only the, the type of people who work at the organization. We have all sorts. We have nurses, we have, any type of, operational people, ITP. There's so many different kinds of people. And then you layer on the fact that healthcare itself is so emotional. The families are emotional, the patients are emotional. You add that, all those layers, there's something happening every day. Okay. So I am excited that I'm transitioning out of the hospital. I've learned a lot there, but I'm excited to go to corporate. No more. So you definitely get that. So you left our organization. And how did you arrive at Eveyln the writer? Because, you left the organization. It's been what? You left in
3 years. So 2019. So summer of 2019. So what's that been? 3 years.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem like it's been 3 years. There's so much that happened in the 3 years. And, people ask me all the time, did you feel good about that? Because you left right before COVID struck. So I left, summer of 2019 to regroup and to think about what I wanted to do with myself. Did I want to go back into healthcare? Because I certainly had offers to come to other locations to work. And I knew right off the bat that I didn't want to go straight into healthcare. I wanted to try other things, because I'm many layers. I'm a many layers person, just like all of us. And so the answer to that, by the way, with the COVID thing is that no, I actually wish I was there, because as an executive, as an executive, this is part of your training. I mean, these are things that you learn. You go through catastrophic event training, and how do you deal in emergency situations, and this is where you test that leadership skill on how you keep the place calm and how you allow everybody to work as a true team, because there's so many layers to the hospital, like you just mentioned. And, this is where I feel like you earn your stripes as a leader. Girl. And so, but people have told me maybe this is not a stripe you wanted to earn.
Like, in the beginning of COVID, it was very new. It was like, what's going to happen? We don't know this disease. And you're just like, ooh, we're going to save the world. And in 5 months, we're going to go back to normal. But after entering year 2, look like we're going into year 3, it gets old. It gets old. It's like, okay, well, it gets old. But I also want to acknowledge, what a wonderful privilege it is that you have the capacity to step back and say, no, I want to think about what I want to do in my life and not have to hop back into another career or another job immediately. So that's a tremendous privilege that's awesome.
Yeah. And I think the truth is it was more on faith than anything else. You know, I didn't know what it was going to look like. I mean, I certainly didn't know COVID was going to happen.
Right.
You know, and so, you know, that changes things financially, you know, your environment, you just everything that you had made a decision on, you know, prior to that. So if anything, it was, hey, you know, it's going to be okay. You know, you tell your kids this all the time. It's time you learn that lesson too. It's going to be okay. What do you want from yourself? You know, what will make you happy? And you know, I have to attribute it to also the time I've spent meditating. You know, I think that's a huge piece of it for me to be able to stay calm, you know, and then maybe also lean on that leadership skill, you know, some of those leadership skills you learn, you know, you learning in training. But I wouldn't say that all of it was planned out, you know, and you know, there was a true understanding that, you know, there's emergency funds here and, you know, you can do this and do that. But, you know, it's something that I've always wanted to do. I want to get back to your question about how did I arrive at Evelyn, the writer, right?
Yeah.
It's something I've always wanted to do. Improving literacy rates has been a part of my life probably since college. I've been volunteering and, you know, tutoring, mentoring for many years, many kids. And, you know, the idea that someone can look at words on a page, read, connect, and imagine and grow and, you know, be able to see and explore the world through words is amazing. You know, it's a part history, it's part creative, it's part imaginative. All of those things come from reading. And, you know, knowledge is power. You know, what you know takes you very far. And so, you know, it's something that, you know, back in college, I went on to read, right, with some kids in a library in an underserved area of Tampa, Florida, where I went to University of South Florida, go Bulls, you know. And, you know, I was part of the Black Student Union and, you know, one of our sections was education. Right. And so I went to read and I was just floored at the age range and their inability to read certain things. And so it's always been a part of me. And to be able to create something that speaks to that now, you know, it's huge for me. But there's been many things that has happened since, you know, 1990 something when I experienced this. You know, which includes life, which includes, you know, I went to school for something and I wanted to see that out, you know.
So it's also interesting to know, I know this about you, but you are also Nigerian American or Nigerian. I don't know if you consider yourself Nigerian American or just Nigerian, but you are Nigerian. And was English your second language? Or, you know, how did you, when you came over, I think you said you were 10?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So yes, I consider myself Nigerian American. And I was 10 years old, about 10 years old when I got here, got to America. So I've been here for a while.
Yeah, you've been here
for quite a while.
It's only been 10 years, actually.
You know, right. You know, I can't even drink yet, you know, it's not 21. I'm not even 21, you know, but no, you know, so I have been here a while and I spoke English, you know, I mean, English is a spoken language. Now English is the main language in Nigeria in general, you know. And so, but also, you know, I was in an environment where people were speaking French, and also Yoruba, my native language, and Pidgin English. And, you know, so there was a variety of languages happening around me, and I just happened to always grasp onto it and remember Yoruba. So I still speak it, what I say, American fluently, because if I speak it to one of my cousins, maybe still in Nigeria right now, I'm sure they giggle and laugh, like, you know, her pronunciation has changed over the years. So I call
it's impressive to me. I'm impressed by that.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So you having Nigerian parents, and this is only based on what I know, did that influence you not becoming a writer sooner or not deciding to switch? How did your upbringing, you know, play into you maybe deferring or maybe putting it off and not following it right away?
Sure. I think, for me growing up, as a Nigerian in America, there was a lot of expectations. Education is a major piece and component to our culture, in our traditions. Learning, just continuously learning, but learning specific things, things that, and I think it's similar. I start to see it's more similar in other cultures too, but,
Right.
That you're going to be a doctor, you're going to be a lawyer, you're going to be a nurse, you're going to be an accountant, you're going to, an engineer, so it's laid out for you what your future should look like. So in the era that I was growing up, education was such a big thing. And it was pushed all the time. And so reading was part of that, writing was part of that, but also the other piece of that was you're going to do it in the framework of these things.
You can write, but it must be a brief, okay? Because you're a lawyer. That's how you go
exactly, right. Exactly. And so thinking about stuff like, becoming an artist, a painter or something like that, or a writer, or, an actor, or, something in entertainment that may have been something that was, pulling you early on, you could do that as a hobby, you could explore that, but it was never your main thing, and so that's the route that I took. I like to say I was an obedient kid because, when I went to college, I started off as an engineering major, and I realized really quickly that wasn't happening for me. Considered architecture for a quick second there and just flew into the business building. And I think, I'm not sure, I feel like my dad was disappointed. He felt like, psychology was a thing for me. And so, it was one of those things where, you grow up in that environment and you feel like you want to do those things. I ended up a business major, graduating with a marketing and a management degree,
which is an awesome degree. I mean, I have one of those.
I'm just saying we know people,
right. You can work in all of those industries as a marketing person, by the way, mom and dad.
Exactly.
I am Dr. Adjacent. I am Dr. Adjacent, which is almost like a doctor.
Yeah, exactly. Right there. So, yeah. But it was I've learned over meeting people over time that, it wasn't indigenous to the Nigerian culture, that many, cultures and tradition, education was huge.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And so that's why I deferred the writing a little bit, and then, but I always think that things like that are excuses because, it wasn't me at that time prepared to go against the grain to do something like that, and so I've learned over the years to do that.
And I think, you know what, and I want you to give yourself some grace because in the way that we were raised in our generation, and we're right on the cusp of being, millennials and Gen X. So we're kind of right in the middle. And so we have the benefit of, being raised by parents who wanted us to get an education, wanted us to get a good, stable job, wanted us to have more than them, right? But then we were also able to see a generation coming after us or being a part of a generation that kind of bucked that, right? Where jobs in Instagram and social media, where you can see what other people are doing and go after your dreams. That wasn't necessarily, how our parents raised us to be.
Yeah.
And so you wanted to be responsible. You wanted to do better than what your parents did. I mean, in certain senses of the word, or you wanted to live up to their responsibilities. So, us getting back to that, it probably takes a little bit of time just because of the way we were raised, right? And
right.
And so I just want you, I don't see that as an excuse. I feel like people who can go back to that part of them that deep and go back to the things they love is an act of bravery, right? At this age, because you can find yourself being very comfortable in where you are. Right. And it is easy to stay comfortable. It is, it's not easy to say, I'm going to take some time and have that conversation with your husband and explain that to your parents and explain that to your friends. What is Evelyn doing? She's finding herself. What is that? And that's hard. It's a hard thing to do. So I just want to give you some credit there, right?
Thank you. I appreciate that. And you're absolutely right. All those things have happened for sure about this journey that I'm taking. But I am full of gratitude that everybody too is giving me some grace as I'm going through this process, because it can be challenging, but it has been more rewarding than it has been a challenge.
So let's talk about On the Streets, because I have it right here. So everybody can see. Yeah. Cannot wait to get my book. So first of all, let's talk about this, because tell everybody about this book, because I think it has special meaning, not just because you wrote it, but also because it's a piece of you, it's a piece of your culture. So let's talk about it.
So absolutely. So there's many things that went into this one children's book that, it's supposed to be for ages 4 to 8, but I do think it's a family book. It's a learning experience for anyone who chooses to pick it up and read it. But Ondo is a state and a town in Nigeria, and that's where my mom's family's from. So I am, both of my parents are Nigerian born and raised. My dad's from a part of Nigeria called Ikire, and I grew up in the part of town called Ile-Ife. And University of Ife is where, we lived, and that my dad, my mom, cousins and friends, everybody lived in that town next to the university. So it was a great time. And Nigeria was booming at the time we were growing up there in the 80s. And so it was a fun time in Nigeria at the time. There was a lot of companies building oil rigs, and Nigeria, known for a lot of resources, including timber and coal and things of that nature. So, but so my mom's from Ondo, Nigeria. And so that's one of the affiliation for the book. But the other piece of the book too is about multi-generational storytelling and relationships. Growing up in Nigeria, what you saw a lot of was a tribe of people, mostly your family, and a lot of stories being passed down from generation to generation. And so, I got to hear stories from my grandmother and my mother sharing about her grandmother, so my great grandmother. And I'm fortunate enough to have a daughter where I can share some of these stories with her, and now through books. For the most part. But that relationship, I think, really shaped who I am as a person. Being able to interact with people in different environments from different places, because that tribe, that village was filled with that community was filled with that. And so when you have a group of people with you that you grow up with, and that you build a relationship with, they really help to make sure that you get to where you want to go and what your purpose is in life. And so, I always say nobody does it alone. And I've learned that since I was a little girl.
And so you take us back to the streets of Ondo, right? I'm trying to say it correctly.
And you're doing great. Did you use the glossary in the back?
I did, okay. Guys. So, before I came, I was like, okay, let me go back to the Yoruba man. There is a glossary. So, I mean, like I said, my daughter read this book before I did, and she came back, and I was going to read it out loud to myself because I wanted to feel like I was reading it to the kids or whatever. And she was like, "Oh, I love that book. It's a great adventure book. And it has great pictures in it." And so, she read it before I did, and she really liked it. And I asked her, I was like, I wanted to make sure she read it. So I was like, "Tell me about it." And she could tell me. I was like, "Okay, you did read it." But it takes place in Ondo. And it's Kemi, Femi, and Tinu are little kids in this book. And just give us a little overview. Don't tell us all of it.
I like to, there's a lot of suspense in there, leaves people on the cliff a little bit, but it's fun and exciting. So On the Streets of Ondo is about 3 kids who live in Ondo, Nigeria. And they have heard from generation to generation stories about the Deruba man. Deruba means scary in Yoruba, the language it's spoken, one of the languages that's spoken in Nigeria. And so the story that they hear about the Deruba man is if you go out at night, he'll make you disappear. So, this is where it gets a little spooky. The kids are like, oh, I want to
Right.
know, what he does, what? And so, but these three kids are our brave and courageous kids, who has decided, guess what? We're going to hatch a plan and we're going to go find this Yoruba man. This is, we want to play out. We want to play at night too. And we just don't want to leave it till during the day. We want to play at night. So they hatch this plan and they go out to look for the Yoruba man. And the question is, do they find him? And if they find him, what happens? And so you've got to get the book. You've got to get the book. I mean, it's fun. It's fun for the whole family. There's some Yoruba words that are intermingled into the story, but definitely in context. And I think you could really read through it and know what it means. And then a glossary in the back for those words. But that's
a great book. First of all, it's definitely adventurous. It's definitely a story that will leave your kids guessing. There's something in there for parents too. Like you said, it's for the family. And one of the things that I really like about the book is that it is beautifully illustrated. I mean, you did a really, really, really good job. The pictures really pop. I like the idea that there are 3 brown kids and they're all shades of brown in here. 3 brown kids who are beautifully, I mean, it's just a really, really beautiful book. How did you find the illustrator for this book?
So I cannot give Kamala Nair enough props. She is amazing. Kamala Nair, Nair is from India. And the way that we, when I first started on this adventure, I like to do things right. So when I started on this adventure, I hired an independent publishing consulting firm when I decided I was going to go into. I did. Wise Ink Publishing, a phenomenal group, a phenomenal team of folks that I worked with. We had so much fun working on this book that I didn't even realize it took us 18 months to publish it.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
So this is the real deal. Holy yes,
right here. Yeah, and on average, it does take 18 to 24 months to publish children's books. People don't know that, but
I didn't know that.
Yes.
And so, it makes sense that she is Indian because the colors just pop. And I know if you think about Indian culture, color is just, a major, they do it well, like they use a lot of color. And so that makes sense. African culture also, a lot of color.
Absolutely. And so I was going to share that that's really when Wise Ink, when we first started the process, there's a full process. When we got to the illustration process, of course, they sent me a list of folks and, we went through some people, we interviewed some people, we talked to some different people. And one thing that I started to realize as I started to do my research was that, okay, in our culture, there's a lot of color, there's a lot of life. You look at, the clothing that we wear, the food that we eat, there's just a lot of color in life in that. And so I wanted someone who was able to do that. And so, when we got to Kamala and I saw some of her work, I definitely wanted to talk to her. What sealed the deal was the conversation around it, was the ability to already look up some Nigerian places. She hadn't looked up Ondo yet, but, already looked up some African cities and towns and stuff like that, and then Nigerian places, and said, okay, what do you think about this and that? And I love that, I love that wanting to go through it. And it's just amazing that it's icing on the cake that, she just happens to be an amazing person as well. And so that was a great experience. And so we went through that iteration and, it's funny you mentioned the 3 kids and the 3 different shades. And so, she, when we first got the first draft and she, colored in the kids and stuff, they were all the same shade. And, and so I really did want the kids to be representative of how I grew up, in Nigeria. We were definitely not all the same shades. As a matter of fact, in the same household, we were not the same shades.
Black culture as a whole. I mean, we know the melanin is, comes in many forms, many shades, even in the same family. Yep.
Exactly. So it's different. So it was great. Of course, I wanted to capture a little bit of, our culture with Kemi, the strongest character of the 3 characters. She has the head tie on. to represent the culture. And then she also has on her shirt is green and white, and that's the color of the Nigerian flag,
It's you so deep. That's so
deep. So, and I'm sure Kamala was like, oh my gosh, Evelyn is so detailed. I don't know if she could take it. But these are like the little things that were done, to really make it pop and stuff like that. And also to make it authentic to the culture. So when kids are learning, they're learning little things. But the truth is, many children in Nigeria don't always wear, native. And so that's why you see the other kids not necessarily native. But there are kids who also wear native.
So I think it's an interesting time. So we will talk about where you can get the book, guys, and where you can download it. But I think it's an interesting time. Timing is everything. Mm-hmm. And, when I think back to, how we started our story and just your journey, it's really a great time for you to release this book. Because there is not a resurgence, I can't say that, but there is a definite interest in African culture now from Black Americans, from people who live in America. We have a unique history around, African culture because we know we're linked to it, right? In some way, but we don't necessarily know the exact path. And so we don't necessarily, I'm going to say African Americans don't necessarily have a tie there, or it's difficult to do that tie. But in culture today, you hear Afro beats, you see everybody taking trips to different parts of Africa, Ghana, South Africa, Senegal. Yeah. And so there is this interest in African culture that wasn't always there, right? When we grew up, Africa, number one, was a mystery because we only knew it from TV, and all you knew was safari, hungry kids, thirsty, dry. And you didn't know anything else about it. I mean, it was all very stereotypical things and so now I feel like there's so much more appreciation for African culture. And so I feel like your book was birthed during a time where it could be most appreciated, which is kind of awesome, actually. So I don't know how you feel about that. That's just my take, but how do you feel?
No, the same way, the same way. I mean, the book, it is about that. I think it's a great first representation of Africa to children. I mean, this book was made for ages 4 to 8. And so when you think about what our children are learning, when you think about, books that are being banned currently in libraries and schools and things of that nature, you can look at this book and say, this book represents the beauty that you will find and see in Nigeria. There are many hills and mountaintops. There are many forests that are very beautiful. There are many bodies of water surrounding Nigeria in of itself, not even anything else. So it's a great opportunity to, get on Google Earth and drop down and see what body of water is really next to Ondo, and do some exploration that way and start to open our children's mind to say, there are so many different people, so many different cultures, and so many different things to learn. And so when we have positive representations of those things, those children are growing up knowing and positively seeing those things in that light. Right. And so so when you flip the book and you're like, it's beautiful, it is representative of areas in Nigeria and Ondo that look just like that. As I mentioned, when Kamala and I were working on this, we were dropping on Google Earth, we were pulling images of what it looked like now. And I mean, you soften it up in illustration, but a lot of work went into it to really represent the country in the way that I saw it when I was growing up in Nigeria.
And it is for all kids. I mean, I think when the younger your kid is, the more open they are to things that are different from them. But I also like the idea that, number one, Black kids can find this book, see themselves in it, right? See themselves represented on a book, which, it may be easier now to do that. But I wonder if you go into their libraries at school, or even your county libraries, how many books, can children find with people who look like them? So to me, that's important. The other thing I think is important is that parents, as you get to explore the world yourself and you open yourself up to different cultures, you're able to identify something that you think your kids can relate to and that you can relate to as well. I mean, I know a lot of my friends have an interest in, African culture, going back to the continent. And so you're able to get two, generations of people to be interested in this book right now, which I think is kind of remarkable.
Thank you.
So
Thank you. Yes. Yeah. Again, it's, it's a generational type of book. It's about generational relationships. You hear about their parents in there, the grandparents in there, the type of fun they have together and things of that nature in the book. So it definitely is for everyone. And I really I agree. I agree with what you're saying. And I really do think that there are so many more people out there writing the books, and I implore people to kind of explore the books that they're writing, because it's more about just the name or the cover or anything like that. It really is about representation of many people across the globe. It's supposed to be a catalyst to say, okay, let me go find out about Norway now. Let me go find out about people in Europe now. Let me go find out about different parts of Africa. Now I know Africa is not just one country, it's multiple countries there. Right. Now I know Africa is broken down in this way, that way. Let me start to explore the people, that live there. So and then the other thing is, I think it's for everyone, the book. I think whether it's Black families, white families, definitely everyone can learn from that type of thinking, learning about different cultures and traditions.
Absolutely. So I want to talk about how this experience has shaped you, has changed you. So when earlier you talked about, taking the time to kind of figure out exactly what you want to do and tapping into, this part of yourself that went all the way back to college. So now that you are on the other side of this, you have contracted a consultant to help you with the book, work with the illustrator, use crowdfunding to help produce the books. Yes. Now you're doing media for the books.
Yes.
What have you learned about yourself during this process?
So the biggest thing I think I've learned about myself is that, perhaps I wasn't a good listener before.
Why do you say that? Why?
Well, because, now I feel like, I'm more creative in the things that I do. When I listen to people, I can absorb better. I felt like before I started the process, it was really about what I wanted, here's what I want, here's what I want, here's what I want. And then at one point I realized, well, I'm surrounding myself with people, what do you know? And I think that that ability to start to listen really helped inform me about what I really wanted, not what I thought I wanted. And then also too, I feel like now, because I do spend a lot more time listening, I can create more, because I can hear people's stories and I can connect it to things that have happened in life, and I can create more. Like, this book is a series, and I had already created the second book before this process, but the third and the fourth came during this process, because I started to really, because the other thing too is when you're in this process and people talk to you, one of the things I love is that people will share their stories. And how they wanted to be a writer, or how they had work that they were working on, and a family member did something about writing. And it's so great to listen to that, because you never know what you're going to hear that's going to inspire you to create something great. And so the second of the 4 stories did come through just talking to people, and so listening a lot better. And I love that, I love that, because I love people. And so to actually be able to hear them now,
right? When you thought you will hear them clearly, because you thought you were listening before, but it was like, dang, that wasn't it. But your story is inspiring to me, because when I was younger, I thought I wanted, I still do think I want to be a writer. I love writing. I've always been, good at it. It's an aspect of my job, not in the creative sense too, but not in the fiction, in the genre that you're writing in. And so it is inspiring to me. I haven't given up on that dream. I do feel like my husband was like, you starting a podcast? I thought you were going to write a book first. I was like, I got to talk to people so I can figure out what the heck I'm going to write about. No, yeah. But I, so your story is inspiring to me. And, one of the reasons I wanted to start this podcast is because I'm like, I need to talk to more people who are doing the things I want to do, who feed me and who can, inspire me to go after the things that I want. Right. So now it is not a dream deferred. Like, I'm like, oh, right. It is I can't wait to get to that point in my life. I can't wait. I know I'm going to eventually get there, but our paths are a little bit different in getting there. So on the Streets of Ondo. So you can get it now, right? On your website, right? Yes. EveylynLoganWrites.com, right?
Yes. Yeah. So you can get it now on the website. And then we are going to go live with the ebook as well as being on Amazon. We're working on getting in Barnes and Nobles right now, whether it be online or in the bookstore. Mm-hmm. And so that will launch July 16th. Mm-hmm. And we will launch, the book worldwide at that point. We do have a limited copies of the book now, both in hardcover and softcover. So yes, if you go to EveylynLoganWrites.com, you can get a copy. And there's also an events calendar on my website. And I will be, local in the DC, Maryland, Virginia area, Northern Virginia area, doing events throughout the summer. So if you happen to be close to any one of those places, come check me out. Some days I'll be reading excerpts from the book, but some days I'll be reading the whole book. So if you want to find out what happened at the end, get the book. Also, you can get it and come get it signed. I sign for free in person when I'm doing the in-person events. So I'm really excited. Follow me on social media. That's where I'm posting most of my stuff. Facebook and Instagram, I'm on Eveyln Logan Writes. On Twitter, it's Evelyn Logan WRTS. I had to take out the vowels. My Twitter told me my Eveyln Logan Writes was too long spelled out. So okay. So those are the three places that I'm at, and I'm really excited about this, Sonia. And I say, if you want to write, go for it. I spent many years a dream deferred, and many of us do for many different reasons. But there's no reason why you can't go for your dreams and what you want to do. Absolutely. And start to bring some of that happiness and positivity into your life in the way that you want it, by doing the things that you want. This is something that I've always wanted to do. Write for children. I have other interests too, you know about them, Zadia. We talked about my recon, writing for TV and film.
Put it out there. Put it out there, right? Let's see this on the Streets of Ondo as a TV show on Nickelodeon, as a TV show on Disney. Like, let's think big about what is to come for you. So don't be shy about it.
That's right.
Say it out loud. Like, say it out loud.
Oh my goodness. I don't know if I have a shy bone in my body, girl.
So congratulations. Congratulations for this. I cannot wait. I mean, I have a soft cover copy. I cannot wait to get the hardcover because I know the pictures are really gonna pop and the story is really gonna pop on hardcover. I love hardcover books because I think there's just so much more. I don't know. I feel like they just pop off the page with the type of paper. Like, it's really nerdy, the type of paper that they use. Oh my God. It's so
it just makes it it all makes a difference, though. When you're talking about quality, it really does. I do want to share one more thing for all the parents that are listening, grandparents. I have a resource page that is, part of this book. And so you can go and download, connect the dots to Africa kind of thing, definition, word match, coloring pages and things like that. So after your child is done reading, there are activities that they can do to reinforce, learning about history, geography, traditions, and things of that nature. So, and I actually have a recipe on there. So anybody who knows about Nigerian food, my mom makes delicious Nigerian food. She's made it for years for different people. And she gave me 3 of her recipes. It's in an activity book that is on sale on my website, but also I've added on that resource page the recipe to puff puff. So if you know puff puff,
that.
Yeah, so if you know puff puff.
Say that on the live. You should have said that. You should have said you could get a recipe on the live in the activity book. That's amazing. So all things are covered. I think, it's fun. It's educational. You can follow up with the activity kit. Look at you. You done just thought about it all.
Cause this is what I do. This is what I want from my kids. So I definitely want that for everybody else's kids. It's a great fun time. And it's a family thing. So you have to make the puff puff as a family. Definitely adult has to be there.
I may do that. You should do that on social media. You should do is it a lot of steps? Even
if it is, you know how they do the food TV shows. You can abbreviate and it's ready
do that.
I should do something with my mom.
Yes, you should. You should do that on Instagram. Or not. Look, no pressure. Just film it first and then put it on Instagram. But I think that would be great.
Oh my gosh.
Evelyn, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. I really enjoyed talking to you. This is a long time coming. So I'm glad we finally made it happen. Congratulations on the book. Congratulations on the success of the book. I know it's going to do well. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. Congratulations on the podcast. I'm missing one episode, the last one, but I'm going to get on it. I love listening.
You know what? I'm just going to make sure that people, before you come on here, no, I'm just kidding.
You better watch. You better listen to every podcast.
I'm just kidding. I'm not one of those people.
But I really enjoy the topics and conversation. And so congratulations to you as well. I can't wait to see it in the bigger markets because it's deserving of it. And I'm so proud of you as well. So thank you for having me. And I'm sure we'll connect soon.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you, Evelyn. And for everybody else, I will see you next time.